Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Catherine and this is Raspberry Reads. I'm fighting the sun today, so I apologize if you get some weird lighting, but I'm trying to film this before the clouds get rid of the sunshine. I had a really good reading month in April, and I hope you did too. I ended up completing 7 books, but I have a few that are still on the go. But today, let's just cover the books that I completed in April, shall we? First off, we have Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco. I always struggle with her name. And I picked this one up because I wanted to dip into romantasy. And I didn't realize that this was actually a YA book when I picked it up. And I was a little bit trepidatious as to whether or not I would enjoy it. And I really did enjoy it. Which surprised me, but in a great way. So this book is about 2 sisters who are witches, and they end up finding themselves interacting with the princes of evil. And it doesn't spoil it because it says it on the back cover, but the adult twins or teenage twin girls are Emilia and Vittoria is murdered. And Emilia seeks revenge on the murder of her sister. And yeah, it was such a great read, very captivating. So the aspects that I enjoyed most about Kingdom of the Wicked is that I found that it was a clear and accessible and descriptive writing style. I think that's really important for a YA. This is obviously not as complex as some of the work that I read, because I tend to read adult literary fiction. But if thinking in the mindset of a young adult, I would say that this particular book was probably geared towards the slightly younger young adult, so maybe like 15, 16 years old. And it was really accessible in that sense. I thought that the premise was interesting. I liked the idea of the princes of hell and that Emilia ends up connected to Wrath, one of the princes of hell. I found that the plot was pretty gripping. The characters were interesting, not that complex, I would say, but I wasn't expecting that for a YA book. But I felt like this book, the plot really helped carry the characters. The other aspect of the plot that I enjoyed is that Kerri Maniscalco obviously has Sicilian heritage. And so she did a really good job of sort of filling in the gaps of so food or aspects of place, scene setting. Yeah, there was a lot of descriptions of Sicilian food because the sisters' family own a restaurant. So yeah, I thought that was like an interesting addition. Some might say it was perhaps a little bit forced at times, but I thought it added a dynamic aspect to the book. And the 2 things that I would say that I didn't enjoy about Kingdom of the Wicked, or more so Kerri Maniscalco's writing style, is that she has terrible dialogue. I know it's written for a younger audience, but the dialogue was just atrocious. So I hope that I do intend to pick up the next book in the series. I hope that that dialogue evolves into slightly more sophisticated or mature dialogue. And then I also didn't like that she had a habit of writing with sentence fragments. I found that really distracting. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I couldn't put it down. In case you're wondering, because I mentioned this book in a previous video, there is no steam in this book whatsoever, no smut. So in that sense, it is appropriate for a young adult audience. Maybe I'm a little bit prudish, but I think that some of the books that are targeted for a young adult audience would perhaps be better placed as adult. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I will pick up the next one in the series. I can't remember what it's called, but I'm sure you'll see it in a wrap up soon. I gave this 4 stars. So 4 stars is a pretty generous ranking on my ranking scheme, and well deserved. Sorry, I had to shift the camera a little bit because the sun is way too bright. It's getting in my eyes. The second book that I read, or rather listened to on audiobook in April, is Dirt Town by Hayley Scrivenor. And it was narrated by Sophie Laughran, Loughran. And this was a contemporary fiction set in Australia, in a very remote or quiet town of Australia. And it's about the disappearance of a young girl. I think she's maybe 12 years old. And the police investigation that follows that. And I'm not going to say any more because I think it's best to go into this not knowing too much about the plot. I found that actually some of the descriptions on like Goodreads or on Libby gave too much away. But I thought that it was really captivating narration. I kept wanting to know what was going on. I thought that the writing style had good examples of analogies, similes, metaphors, really brought the writing to life. I thought that the characters were fairly complex, not always. I think it's always difficult to write child characters. And one of the perspectives in this story was from Ronnie, one of the protagonist's friends. And the narrator, Sophie, did a really good job of having a higher pitched voice to convey Ronnie's perspective, but at times some of the characters felt a little bit flat. Unfortunately, it lost momentum around 2/3 of the way through, and I found that some of the storyline tangents were a little bit distracting, but overall it had a really good ending. It had a kind of an unexpected ending. It had a lot of emotion in it, quite sad, or sad and complicated. Like, there were lots of emotions flowing. But yes, and I gave it 4 stars because it was a, let's say, like mystery suspense genre, and it delivered. It delivered on all of the qualities that I looked for in a mystery suspense. Following from Dirt Town, we have another audiobook called The Lying Room, and this is by Nicci French. I've mentioned that writing duo numerous times on my channel. And this was narrated by Olivia Poulet, or Pullet, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And this was a really interesting premise. It was basically about I kind of trying to not to give it away, but it's about a woman named Neve, and she finds herself in a very complicated situation where somebody she knows dies, and then the circumstances of how they die, but she has to she has to cover up rather what happened because there's too many secrets involved that would implicate her, let's say. So yeah, you kind of have to go in blind to this one. However, I would say that the last third of the book felt very forced, and the reason why it felt forced is because there's a plot twist at the end, and it felt like the authors had tried to construct or force is the only word I can think of, the narrative into fitting with that plot twist, and it just didn't work. It felt clumsy. So it was a very disappointing ending, I must say. And I also felt that because most of this book follows a police investigation, I felt that the dialogue between the suspects or people of interest with the detective to be really far-fetched. Like, you'd never have a conversation with a detective in that way. So yeah, I felt that didn't really work very well. So I don't know if you can get the sense that I didn't really enjoy this book, but overall I gave it a low 3 stars out of 5. I would probably say give it a miss. It's not one of Nicci French's best books, but it was worth a try. And certainly if you decide to pick this one up, I do not recommend the narration. So Olivia Poulet, I'm not sure what was going on, but she had these really odd moments of inhaling when she was doing the dialogue, almost as if she was inhaling at the end of a sentence that made it seem like it was the character doing that. as part of their dialogue or speech rather than her just breathing in. It was so distracting. Yeah, I really couldn't stand it. So definitely don't pick up the audio. But yeah, overall, there's lots of better Nicci French books that I would recommend more so than The Lying Room. So a bit of a miss. The fourth book, I'm just grabbing it, that I read in April was Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery. I recommended this book or talked about it, I guess, in my Canadian children's literature video that just recently went up. And then after I filmed that, I was looking at my copy, this one, and was thinking, that spine does not look cracked. And normally if I read a book, I'm not like ferocious with them, but normally they end up getting a little bit of a bend in the spine. And then I thought, have I ever read the full unabridged version of Anne of Green Gables? And I came to the conclusion, embarrassingly, that I don't think I had. I've read the picture book version, and I've watched the films, the Canadian films from the 90s, loads of times, to the point that I think I had thought I had read the book. And I know that I've read the second book in the series, because that version had cracks, but yeah, this one didn't. It does now because I read it. It was beautiful. It's very similar to the story that I thought I knew from the adaptations, the 1990s films that I grew up with. There was a little bit more, I would say, conservative aspects to the original, which makes sense given the time period that it was written. But there was more discussion about religion or faith, let's say, and maybe a conservative community that Anne lived in at the time. But other than that, the films stayed pretty true to the book, and yeah, I absolutely adored it. I was destroyed at the end, if you know what happens with Matthew, but yeah, overall, I mean, 5-star read, and I was a bit sad that I'd left it so long to finally read Anne of Green Gables, but there you go, never too late for a classic. The fifth book that I read, or rather listened to in April, was Metronome by Tom Watson, and it was narrated by Christine Hewitt. And so this is a dystopian or speculative work, Tom Watson's debut, I believe, and it's about two characters, so Ina and her husband Whitney. Now, actually, when I went to go and borrow this on the Libby app, I thought it was about two women, so I was slightly disappointed that Whitney was in fact a man, but nevertheless, Ina and her husband Whitney have been exiled to an island, or what they assume is an island, for a prison sentence. And they live on this croft or farmstead, very wild, remote area, and basically are having to be self-sufficient. It seems that the supplies that would periodically show up have ceased, and you start to try and unravel why that is. It's a book that's full of secrets. And one of the most compelling aspects that you find out early on, and is indeed in the description of the book, is that they need to take a pill or pills regularly throughout the day. And as the book goes on, you learn why that is. It was a very unsettling book. It was compelling. I listened to it mostly when I was getting ready for bed. Which was probably not a good idea, because then I would sort of dwell on it, trying to fall asleep. But yeah, I thought it was a really clever premise. As my long-time readers know, I think that like I've been on booktube for ages, as my readers who have been around since the beginning 2 months ago now, I really like dystopian, so this was definitely my jam. And I'm not going to say any more than that because I think it's best to go in blind. I gave it a high 3 stars. I think it was a little bit draggy. Perhaps if I went back, I might give it 4 stars, but I won't reread it because it's one of those books that once you know what's happened, it doesn't really make sense to reread it. But yeah, I would say high 3-star to 4-star read. Very enjoyable. If you like speculative or dystopian fiction, then I definitely suggest checking out Tom Watson's Metronome. The 6th book that I read, and be prepared, a rant is coming, was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I listened to the audiobook by Jeremy Irons, and I must say Jeremy Irons did a wonderful job narrating this pile of poo, in my opinion. This is a very divided book, and it's got so much acclaim that I feel badly that I'm about to trash this book, but I should say that I probably should have briefly looked at some of the reviews on Goodreads or elsewhere, because it is such a divisive book. There were a lot of very low star ranking reviews that had the same feelings about The Alchemist as I did. And perhaps if I had seen some of those, I wouldn't have bothered reading it. So yes, this book is about Santiago, who's a shepherd boy, and he is looking for sort of fame and fortune and going on great adventures and sort of making the most of his life. And so it's, in that sense, it's a very philosophical book. It seems to be like moral stories, parables, that type of thing. And it's all about fulfilling your personal legend. This idea of personal legend keeps coming up time and time again. It's got a lot of religious overtones. Santiago likens, or what's the word I'm looking for? Attributes some of these omens, these good omens, as to his relationship with God. So it is a religious book in that sense. The things that I did not like about this book is that it had a terrible portrayal of women. So there are very few women in this book, and the ones that are in it is there's a gypsy woman, so-called gypsy woman, I must say. And she's portrayed as like a sneak and a cheat. And then there's a woman, his wife, named Fatima, and nobody cares about what Fatima wants at all. She's hardly mentioned in it. And that's it. So women are basically treated as either sneaky or as property. I found it very repetitive. It was basically like personal legends, like hitting me over the head. It was very wealth focused. So basically the whole goal in life as defined by The Alchemist is to have riches. Santiago essentially goes on this long journey to get to the Egyptian pyramids to seek treasure. So it's very wealth focused. It had a lot of stereotypical and discriminatory language. Bearing in mind that this book is not that old, it was meant to be told as sort of like an old-timey, old-fashioned folktale, but I did not like the use of some of the descriptions of the peoples that he met along the way and how they were portrayed. I found that the conversations that Santiago had with the alchemist to be very tedious. This is not a very long book, which is why I thought I'd just fit it in April. I think it was maybe 6 hours. Obviously I listened to it a bit faster. But yeah, I don't even know what they were talking about half the time because I was so bored. So basically, in conclusion, this is a cheesy self-help book kind of trussed up to be a parable folk tale. So if that's your cup of tea, then I'm sure you will love this. It was not for me. I am not the right audience for The Alchemist. It basically summarizes that life is generous to those who pursue their personal legends. And from what I took from that, it's like, okay, so basically you need to be privileged in order to go and pursue your personal legends. And it discounts anybody who might be different, women, people with inequalities. It doesn't take into account social injustice. And I know I'm probably looking too much into that, but that's just how I feel about this book, that if you're going to give a message of sort of achieving the the best that you can be in your life, that I think it probably needs to be a little bit more dynamic in this day and age. And so unsurprisingly, it was a massive disappointment, and I gave it 2 stars. And the only reason it got 2 stars is because the writing was pretty good, and that it was, I suppose, a bit of a clever idea. But otherwise, no, just a terrible book for me. Please let me know your thoughts. Have you read The Alchemist? Did you enjoy it? Why or why not? I'm very interested to know, because I'm sure there's massive differences of opinions on this one. But yeah. The last book that I wanted to share, and we've completely lost the sun now, so sorry if this video has turned a bit dark, but I read the book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, and this was for my book club, which, as I'm filming this, will be tomorrow. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about this book, but I'll try and walk you through my thoughts. So the things that I liked about it is that I thought it was a very innovative book in terms of its approach. Such a great premise. So you basically follow Benny O is the protagonist. So he's a teenage boy, and his mother Annabelle, and both of them have very complicated but different mental health issues as a result of a family tragedy. And the main point of this book, I guess, or construct within the book, is that it's divided into a dialogue, so different sections where you've got the book as the main narration, and then Benny is responding to what the book is saying. Let's see if I can find. So yeah, so here, for example, it says the book. You also have interspersed excerpts from a book on tidying that Annabelle, the mother, is reading. And there you go. And then you've got a different font and text for Benny's responses. So in that sense, it was a really interesting book in terms of how it was laid out. The characters were good in this. Sometimes I found them a little bit one-dimensional. I thought that there was good diversity in it. Benny is part Japanese. Yes, part Japanese. And there's lots of different people from different socioeconomic backgrounds in it. So from that perspective, it was interesting. But yeah, sometimes I felt like the characters were a little bit flat. And not really relatable, I would say, and not likable either. That, you know, this book is a lot about their problems. So it's a bit of a slog, I must admit. I will say that this book has loads of trigger warnings associated with it. So I would say tread carefully if you have difficulties with mental health topics. I also didn't understand. There's one kind of theme that ran through it where I'm trying to say this without giving too much away, but that Benny's mental health difficulties are associated with voices, and one theme that is throughout this is that he's got a really negative inner monologue, and I didn't really get why that existed in conjunction with the other plot point about voices. So yeah, that was something that I've sort of maybe missed. Ruth Ozeki is also a Buddhist? Yeah, she's a Zen Buddhist priest, and a lot of Buddhism comes out in this book. So that was a really interesting perspective. So if you enjoy reading about that sort of thing, I thought she did, then it would be a good book for you. And I thought that she did a good job incorporating that into this very imaginative story. And also, even though I don't know exactly which city it takes place in, I know it's in the west coast of the United States, but I can infer, like, let's say that it might be sort of like Vancouver or San Francisco, both places I'm familiar with, have very chronic homelessness problems. And I thought that this book did a really good job of explaining the reality of homelessness and challenges associated with, you know, drug dependence, mental health issues, that sort of thing. And each character was sort of respected for their own personal journey, whilst you were learning about Benny's journey and his mum's. So all that being said, I would say that I enjoyed this book more so for the writing than for the plot. I found it a little bit boring partway through, but I still gave it 4 stars. So I think this is a book where some people will really enjoy it, especially if you enjoy contemporary fiction. For me, again, it just wasn't really the type of content that I enjoy reading, but I respect Ruth Ozeki's project and her writing and her skill as a writer. I probably won't pick up anything else from her, at least not, I don't have any plans to. But I would recommend this book for people that are interested in this sort of content. So yes, 4 stars for the book of Form and Emptiness. I'm really intrigued to see what my book club has to say about this one. Otherwise, I know that I told my viewers that I was going to read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I'm halfway through that one, so that will have to be part of my next month's wrap up. I'm really enjoying it though. So yeah, stay tuned for my final thoughts on that one. So that just leaves me to say, what did you read in April? Were there any books that you really enjoyed? Any that you didn't enjoy? Have you read any of the books that I've mentioned here? All the usual things, please contribute below in the comments. I love chatting with you all. And yes, that's all I have to say today. So take care, and I'll see you soon in a new video. Bye.